Hello, good afternoon. It's Jameson here. Today I'm going to do a journal entry. This is going to be number 15. I haven't done one of these since November 27th, 2022. It's been a long time. Today, what I'm going to ramble about in my journal entry is my recent shift in mindset of about approaching jiu-jitsu as both someone who engages in the sport constantly and also as someone who is in a coaching position. Right? So just a little bit to contextualize this talk, I've been training for about 2 years and 2 months, just around there. I've been a mentor slash coach for about a year and 7 months, and for the last 4 months, I have been responsible for my own program, um, a kids jujitsu program. I've worked with kids the entire time, and have had the opportunity to teach like cardio kickboxing classes and adult classes, but my main focus and responsibility is the kids instruction. Okay. So where I am right now as both a coach and as an athlete is I have adopted this ecological dynamics approach, the ecological approach, the constraints, the whatever you want to call it, the more, hey, everything needs to stay live in an environment, it needs to be unscripted, and then if you're at the level, whatever level they're at, you need to scale the game to their level. You need to make sure they understand what effects need to occur to be successful, right? Like things that never change. So, how did I get here today from my previous exposure, right? Like, it's I've essentially torn down everything I thought I thought about jujitsu and have rebuilt it in this new kind of weird soup like duplex building. Hey, I didn't couldn't you can't take down everything, but you still got to keep building eventually. So let's go to the start, right? Mentor, pretty much just was a mentor in the kids class for a very long time, and then eventually had the opportunity to start teaching. And normally you're just going to do what the person before you did. If you work hands-on, they're your guide, and you're going to imitate them, and then you're going to make it yours. Okay, that process that happened, I adopted what I now know to be information processing and teaching that way, and I really enjoyed it. It was fun. While I was aware of that was my only awareness, right? Because I always believed that I'm gonna do whatever I think is best to develop jujitsu skill and other things too, like confidence, respect, emotional regulation. But this is all just a consequence of doing the sport, you know. And so around 4 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, I became fully responsible. And even before then, when I was teaching the class, when I was responsible for it, I was been doing a lot of research. You start getting into the Donahar instructionals. You start looking up how to coach, how to be clear. You start learning about chunk size and how many pieces of information people can really hold in their brain, how your words impact how people think and act, and how you like how many steps you use, when you use the steps, how often you should cover each move. You got to start thinking about all these things, and it's a lot. But you'll do it if you're a coach and you're passionate and this is your thing. Like I'm deeply obsessed with this. No one's got to have this level of obsession. There's people who have higher levels of obsession with way more knowledge in this area, and big ups to them. When you're doing the research, you'll start running into people who have different ways to approach skill development and different ways to make someone skillful. So it started with, the going on the BJJ mental models and listening to their How to Coach, listening to Bert Mickelson, listening to all these different episodes on this, and then you run into one with Kabir, because my whole thing's kids. Okay, Kaboom Kids, that's a crazy program. And then there's one by I think the top team with man, I'm drawing a blank. But their whole thing's like alignment. Yeah, you start thinking conceptually. It's like, how can I teach concepts within information processing? You know, the person, Rob Bernanke, whatever school that is, you start listening to him and his students and the person above him and how they're talking about how they build kids classes and how they approach skill and teaching these concepts and making sure the concepts are underpinning the technique you're teaching, right? Because all the moves, we all know the moves to be just moves you could hit if these things happen, right? Like the moves have effects. But then you start listening to Kabir, and Kabir is, information processing, talking about chunks and this and how the class needs to be engaging and you want to connect and have a curriculum and have a culture. And then he starts saying, and then you hear him one day say, hey, they just want to have fun. And doing the thing is fun. And the thing is jujitsu. So then you start thinking, how do we have as much as the thing in the class as possible if that's going to keep people engaged and coming in? Because that's the goal. You want them to come in and train, and then if they come in and train, they're bound to get good. That's what we're offering. We're offering an environment in which you can train. But then you start, you see it. You start hearing about this thing, this ecological thing, this ecological dynamics and approach and the constraints and these games. You get on Kit Dale and you're deep YouTube diving on how, you should be playing these games and keeping it live to get skill. And Greg is saying this, and this other person's saying this, and you watch the video 3 months before you really hear it. You watch that Josh Beam BJJ where he talks about is drilling dead, and you watch half of it, and you're like, "Yeah, this is crap." And then you watch it again 4 months later with a completely different knowledge base of what you think you're doing. And it's like, hold up, hold up. This makes a lot of sense. And then now you're listening to all the Greg Sodders podcast, and you're on his Instagram. He's like, read these books, and now you're reading the books. And if you're me, you're booking a flight to Maryland to go train there for a week, right? And so I feel like I kind of got off topic, but look, the second I found out about the ecological approach, I immediately implemented it. That's the beauty of having your own program is I can immediately just, hey, let's try this. And I've tried it ever since, and I have not gone back, and I've been, let's use good words here, tenacious. I've been steadfast in my mindset, and I've been preaching it, okay? I'm knocking on your door every day soliciting this approach to my coworkers and to my peers. It's probably not the most enjoyable thing because I'm way too obsessed and I'm hard-headed. So then you start implementing it, and you're like, damn, these kids are getting good. They are changing. You're not having to tell them to go harder. They're going hard. They're not they're not getting distracted. They can get hurt and immediately want to roll. They're more engaged. The engagement is through the roof. And then they start changing, okay? Like the literal way they process is changing because you're always going to be slightly cursed by the fact that us who have gone through information processing for so long and believed in it so hard are going to be it's going to be there's a huge adjustment period. But then you have these people who these kids who or other I've met them with a couple of adults who've only had this approach too that the way they think about the sport and approach the sport is different. And you know why. Now you know why. You know that skills can't be taken apart and put back together. Simple or that it's not as effective to do that. um yeah, the kids start asking questions like where should I put my attention instead of how do I hit this move, the move's not working. I haven't heard that in a long time. I've heard I'm getting frustrated that I can't do the thing or win, but I'm doing the thing, coach. I'm grabbing their feet, but I can't get past their legs today. It's like, okay, let's problem solve together. And then you start getting them to think, and then you're like, oh my gosh, they know so much. They know so much. You know, you're getting them to understand all those weird nuances in between moves, and it's they're doing heel hooks, and you've never explicitly explained to them how to make that occur, but you're explaining how arm bars occur, how rotational locks occur, and they're connecting hip to hip. They're putting their feet on their partner's hip. They're looking at the ankle and being like, it looks like I could grab the toes, and they're starting to grab the toes, and it looks like, oh, I could twist this, and it's like, pause. We're not over that yet. I haven't started teaching them that yet. It's in the cooker. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But now you start teaching effects of jujitsu. You start thinking about external effects where it's not about where I'm putting my body, it's about the effect I'm having on the other person. You start thinking, I always thought jujitsu was like chess. Like, I do this move, he thinks about it, and he does that move, and I think, and then I do a move. But now, I am doing the thing the entire time. I am trying to immobilize you the entire time. And then once you're immobile, I'm going to try to break you or strangle you. Or I'm going to try to break or strangle you while doing the immobilization. Those would be things like, I imitated Greg for a very, a very long time before I've made it mine, and it's I would say 80% of it's still mine because I can make my own games and I understand more than I did previously. But you got to continue to learn, and I personally am struggling to stay open-minded about other people doing the approach too, because we're having a slow change within our gym that is kind of, I'm the lighthouse for the people around me, but it's funny to think that my first lighthouse person was like Greg, and then you got Scott Seabright, and then you're starting to, it's like, oh, who do they look up to? Oh, they look up to all the doctors and the scientists, like Dr. Rob Gray and all these other scientists who've got these studies, and they're, Josh Peacock, and you're being like, I should probably try to go get where they're getting their information from, and yeah, this probably wasn't that clear, but it's just something I wanted to ramble about. I'm gonna try to start making more of these videos again. If there's anything you want to hear me talk about in the future, just leave a question in the comments. Yeah, deuces.